All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about something that's being called a full-blown revolution in mental health care, the return of psychedelics. We're going to look at how these compounds, which were basically banned from labs for decades, are now right at the forefront of treating some of our most difficult mental health challenges. So let me just start with a question. What if you could treat severe depression not with a pill you take every single day, but with just one or two guided sessions that could give you relief for months? I know, it sounds like science fiction, but it's the very real possibility that's kicking off a massive new wave of psychiatric research. And honestly, the need for this is, well, it's urgent. For millions and millions of people, the existing treatments for things like depression, PTSD, and addiction just don't cut it. They don't work well enough, or sometimes they don't work at all. This is exactly why scientists are going back and taking a serious look at a class of compounds that have been sitting on a shelf for 50 years. And that brings us to what everyone is calling the psychedelic renaissance. It's super important to get this. This isn't some brand new idea. It's really more of a lost science that's finally being rediscovered with all the tools and rigor of modern medicine. I mean, the history here is pretty stark. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was a ton of serious scientific interest. But then, as these substances got tied up with the counterculture, a wave of restrictive laws in the 70s just slammed the door shut on all of it. It really wasn't until the 2000s that things started to change, letting researchers finally do the kind of proper, controlled studies we're seeing today. So the big question is, how do they actually work? The main idea is that they kind of reboot the brain, letting it break free from these rigid, unhealthy loops of thinking. A great way to picture it is like shaking up a snow globe that's been sitting still for way too long, letting all the pieces settle in a new way. Okay, so here's what's happening on a brain network level. We all have something called the default mode network, or DMN. It's kind of like the brain's idle mode, where we think about ourselves and let our minds wander. The problem is, in conditions like depression, this network gets stuck in overdrive, trapping people in these cycles of negative thought. What psychedelics seem to do is quiet that network down, and at the same time, they get parts of the brain that don't normally communicate to start talking to each other. The result is this incredible state of mental flexibility. And this leads to the real game changer, neuroplasticity. See, this isn't just a fleeting feeling. The research is showing that psychedelics can physically help the brain grow new connections between itself. And that's a huge difference from traditional antidepressants, which can take weeks to have an effect. This happens fast, and it opens up this powerful window where therapy can make a really lasting change. You're not just managing symptoms anymore. You're potentially healing the root cause. So the theory is really compelling, right? But what about the evidence? Does the actual data back up all this hype? Let's take a look at what the clinical trials are telling us. First up is major depressive disorder. And we're talking specifically about the cases that have been really resistant to other treatments. The results here are just incredible. In a huge study from Johns Hopkins, psilocybin-assisted therapy had an effect that was nearly 4 times stronger than standard antidepressants. Just let that sink in. 4 times. And what's even more amazing is that after just 2 sessions, more than half of the participants were in clinical remission a month later. That means they no longer even met the criteria for depression. That is a truly staggering result. Okay, now let's switch gears to post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which, as you know, can be an unbelievably difficult condition to treat. And here, the big phase 3 trials using MDMA-assisted therapy have shown results that are just as dramatic. I mean, just look at this chart. Over 71% of the people who got MDMA with therapy no longer qualified for a PTSD diagnosis. That is a massive leap compared to the group that got therapy with a placebo. It's helping people deal with trauma in a way that, for a lot of them, was just unimaginable before. And the potential keeps on going, moving into another incredibly tough area to tackle: addiction. For both alcohol and nicotine, psilocybin has been showing some amazing promise. For people with alcohol use disorder, studies found huge drops in heavy drinking days. And for smoking, a pilot study found that around 60% of people were still smoke-free long-term. That's a success rate that just blows most conventional treatments out of the water. Now, as incredible as all this sounds, it is definitely not a magic bullet. It's so important that we take a step back and talk about the very real challenges and roadblocks that are on the path to this becoming a mainstream thing. Yeah, we really need some perspective here. The science is super promising, but it's also still young, and a lot of the studies are pretty small. Then you've got the legal side of things, which is complicated and moves really slowly.
The therapy itself is also incredibly expensive and time-consuming. You need highly trained professionals for long sessions. And maybe most importantly, these treatments are not for everyone. Careful screening of patients is absolutely critical for safety.
And I really cannot say this loudly enough. This has nothing to do with recreational use. The entire model that's showing all this promise is psychedelic-assisted therapy. The substance is just a tool, a catalyst, that's given in a safe, controlled medical environment with a ton of professional support. We're talking sessions before to get ready, and then crucial integration sessions after, to help make sense of it all. That support structure is completely non-negotiable. There's this quote from the research that I think just perfectly captures this whole moment. It's about opening up a brief yet profound therapeutic window, a short period of incredible insight and brain flexibility that, when you have the right guidance, can spark changes that actually last a lifetime. So, we end with the biggest question of all, don't we? The challenges are real, they are significant, but the data is undeniably powerful. Are we looking at the beginning of a whole new era in how we understand and heal the human mind? Only time and more research will tell for sure, but it's without a doubt one of the most exciting frontiers in all of medicine today. Thanks for joining me.